do you know about EUDR compliance solutions? This webinar, as the title says, it's algorithm versus human, manual satellite data analysis for the EUDR. We'll be looking at the manual aspect of how all this data is collated. So welcome, I'm your moderator, Anthony Myers, and today we are joined by Freddie Monk, co-founder and CEO of AI Data, a UK and Ghana-based AI consultancy focused on turning geospatial data from satellite, drones, and sensors into transformational insights for farming, forestry, and climate projects. Joining Freddie is Chloe Alafegha-Quakumey. I hope I've got that right. Chloe, a junior geospatial data analyst at AI Data as well. She analyzes spatial data to support various projects and dedicated to using geospatial technology for informed decisions and sustainable practices. What does all this mean? I have no clue about this technical side of things, and this is why Freddie and Chloe are here with us today to explain a little bit more about what they do. Chloe will be presenting a slide presentation a little later, so stick around for that. So these lunchtime webinars are purposely short. We keep them short and sweet, but we have an extension today due to the importance and complexity of the topic. We'll try to answer all the pre-submitted questions, and if you have any questions, you should put them in a Q&A box, which I think you should be able to see on your screen, and we'll try to get through them while we're on air. Okay, just a little background. I won't talk too long, but I think it's important to say that most of us are familiar with the EUDR. Most of us on this webinar will be, but just a quick recap, just in case you are coming to this webinar and don't know what it is or a little bit unsure about what it entails. The protocol states that any deforestation or forest degradation on the given plots of land shall automatically disqualify all relevant commodities and products from these plots of land from being placed or made available on the EU market or exported. Now, it's important to note that the EU views the legislation that's coming in on the 30th of December as binary. Remember that. So it's either compliant or it's not in their view. So it doesn't provide scope for detective and corrective measures. Legislation starts when the cocoa importer, and again, this is important, designated as the operator, uploads her due diligence statements into the registry, which means their data has to be watertight. So the dreaded high risk scenario for operators is that the supply chain is polygon mapped, everything is done, the data's there, it's all clean, and the initial risk assessment showed most of these polygons came back as low risk or compliant, but then a few were flagged as potentially non-compliant. So now what? And how do we prevent this? Because it means that the cocoa will not be allowed into the EU. And this is where my first guest, Freddie, comes in. He will outline some of the solutions that AI Data is providing to clients to ensure polygon mapping data is EUDR compliant. So Freddie, please, I've spoken enough. To guide us through some of the issues that have been raised in this area that you're picking up in your work.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that very kind and thorough introduction. I think I probably don't need to talk to people too much about what we do now. You've covered that and who I am, so that's great. I guess important to say, why are we in this consortium? We're, as Tony said, a geospatial satellite data analysis company, an AI consultancy. We're in this consortium to provide end-to-end EUDR solutions affordably, scalably, and accurately across the value chains. We're serving growers, importers, satellite data companies, and the regulator. And our mission really is to ensure that EUDR, firstly, is applied so that it achieves its purpose, so that we stop deforestation, and secondly, so that it is applied fairly. So very, very important, as Tony just mentioned there, that we're not penalizing unjustly farmers or importers who have not been guilty of any malpractice. I think something that we've observed quite commonly is that using purely algorithmic analysis of satellite data to determine deforestation often leads to polygons being misclassified. So I won't spoil all of the interesting methodology behind that. I'm going to leave that to Chloe, who's done all of this work. But that's really what we're going to be talking about today, using a combination of algorithms and human analysis to ensure that EUDR is applied fairly, accurately. And if you do have high-risk polygons or farms, we can talk about what we do in that situation. So thank you very much for having us. Over to you, Chloe.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. Yes, Chloe, now you've been heavily involved in the geospatial technology for AI data. So please do share your presentation, and particularly, this is really crucial to this webinar and to the whole data collection process itself. Humans in the loop, HITL, that AI data are offering as part of their solution. And so explain that and the importance of manual satellite data analysis along with the geospatial element. So take it away, Chloe.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Freddie. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you. Well, with regard to your question, Tony, our process is going to be displayed like you introduced on the screen, and we would be taking you through some of the challenges that automated satellite analysis systems face, particularly with regards to the data that they use, right? And we're going to look at how some of the analysis used performed on the polygons harms farmers due to the misflags.
Great. And before you dive in, Chloe, sorry, before you dive in, I just want to remind the audience that they can actually, if there's any slides or any of the presentation that they're not quite sure of, we're happy to go back and revise some of those, and you can talk a bit more in depth if people have got queries on any part of your presentation. Is that okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we'll talk about these misflags, and then we'll dive into how our manual inspection process works, which combines expert analysis with top satellite data for greater accuracy. After which we will be looking at our mitigation strategies, including polygon formation and other remediation processes to address the issues effectively. Now, imagine a company like Kenchoko, which owns 5 small farms, totaling just under 10 hectares. These funny looking shapes on the screen, called polygons, show the extent of the farms. These farms are crucial for Kenchoko because they generate a substantial part of the company's income. To comply with the EU deforestation regulation, these farms have to be deforestation and degradation free. Kenchoko submits these polygons to a risk assessment provider that utilizes automated analysis and receives a report that says, these farms cannot be declared compliant. According to our data, there are forest pockets, especially within 2 polygons that have been deforested. And exporting any produce from these farms to the EU market will not be advisable. For Kenchoko, this means facing a devastating financial hit, with questions like, what about the unharvested produce on these farms? What happens to the land then? Does it have to be discarded? If we ever find ourselves in Kenchoko's shoes, we might wonder, what options are available when your deforestation assessment indicates non-compliance? And how can you be certain that your automated analysis report is accurate? This is where iData solution comes in. Let's walk through it. Manual inspection is a thorough and detailed method used to verify land cover and deforestation. Unlike automated systems that rely solely on satellite data and pre-existing forest maps, manual inspection involves human expertise to ensure accuracy. Now, with Kenchoko's plight in mind, here's what we discovered. Sometimes automated systems can flag farms as high risk for deforestation inaccurately. Let's look at a clear case where manual inspection reveals the truth. This polygon shows the possibility of a large forest cover at the end of 2020, which is the cutoff period for the regulation. The deforestation assessment based on this information showed a high chance of the said forest experiencing some loss between 2020 and 2024. Hence, the risk rating you see on the screen here sports a large chunk in the medium-high risk category. Automated analysis may incorrectly label areas within a polygon as high risk due to inaccurate data or algorithms. For example, a section of farmland or cropland might be marked as deforested even though it has been in use for crops for years, which is the case with this polygon that we're looking at, and we'll see how manual inspection reveals that. When we receive a report like what you saw previously, we begin with high-resolution satellite images. And a mere visual comparison can tell you that this flagged area was actually cropland or farmland before the EUDR cutoff date and not forest. And as you can see in the after image, a canopy of trees exists. It looks made up, I know, but it actually exists, and we will be happy to share the geolocation of this polygon with you. Of course, we have Kenchiko's permission, so we're clear in that regard. Now, with this polygon properly tagged as cropland, the deforestation assessment showed that the land was compliant with the decrease in vegetation attributed to harvest activities on the farm. Hence, the corrected rating of low risk. Let's look at another example. In some cases, automated systems can incorrectly attribute risk within specific areas of a polygon. Let's look at this sample that shows how this happens and how manual inspection corrects an error like this. Now, the spread of the forest cover here at the end of 2020 looks like a tank that covers almost all of the polygon. The deforestation assessment shows a good chunk of it in green, which indicates unlikely deforestation. Hence, the risk rating has a larger portion in the medium-low risk category. See, global maps often miss the nuances of smaller regions. In this case, a smallholder farm was flagged as non-compliant with the visible medium-high risk rating. And like this, it's easy to just write off the polygon as unuseful due to the spread of the deforestation. Like Tony mentioned earlier, the regulation is binary. You're either compliant or you're not. But I'd like to tell you that the coverage of the forest was inaccurately assessed, which led to a deforestation assessment that did not truly reflect the state of the polygon's compliance with the EUDR for the time period of the analysis. How's that, you might ask? Well, let's see how manual inspection explains it. Again, by looking at it, you can tell where the forest actually was before the cutoff date for the EUDR. The whole plot or polygon was not covered in forest in 2020. And in the after image, the area populated with canopy seems to have lost some of the canopy, and the portion that had no canopy appears to have gained some. The manual inspection for this polygon showed that the forest was concentrated on one side, as you can see highlighted in green. And on the other side, which is closer to the top of the polygon, highlighted in brown, it was bare ground, or it had no forest. The deforestation assessment indeed showed deforestation within this polygon, which is shown by the peach-orange tones. But notice where it is. It's almost all on the portion of the polygon that had no forest. The portion of the polygon that had no forest rather shows an increase in vegetation, which is why the corrected risk rating was split into high risk and low risk. For a case like this, what is the fate of this plot and its contents? As we see here, the high-risk zone shows a lot more forest loss than forest gain, which makes it completely non-compliant with the EUDR. But by updating the polygon based on the newfound data we got from the manual verification, we can ensure that only the areas with actual deforestation are flagged. And this allows for more precise risk attribution and prevents unnecessary consequences for areas that meet the regulations criteria. So we can see the salvaged plot on the right shows negligible deforestation. And with this, Kenchiko can confidently export only the produce from this part of the polygon to the EU market. And to keep everything transparent, we calculated an estimate of the expected yield from this salvaged farmland on the right to ensure that only the appropriate amount of produce is exported. maintaining credibility and alignment with the EUDR. You see, these examples highlight the importance of combining automated analysis with manual inspection, as you're better able to validate the data you use in your automated processes. Our solution not only ensures more accurate assessments through manual verification, but also boosts productivity by providing yield data. This approach enhances the accuracy of assessments by preventing false high-risk ratings and unnecessary penalties for growers. It also strengthens the credibility of automated analysis. By combining both methods, you have a more reliable and trustworthy evaluation of deforestation risk that supports regulatory compliance with confidence. So, like Freddie mentioned earlier, we address the needs of growers, importers, satellite providers, and regulators, making our solution comprehensive by fostering a compliant, productive, and transparent agricultural sector. Thank you.
Okay, Chloe, well, thank you for that very detailed, very technical assessment, and it just shows the level of work that's going into providing these polygon maps for the due diligence statements. Just while you're on, if you could just stay on camera a little bit. So a couple of questions for you. I guess Data, along with other solution providers, are working with open platform data as a foundation. Is that correct? Like Global Forest Watch and its partners. So how do you work with that? And did you layer your own data on top of that? Use the open data source as a foundation? Would that be correct?
Well, we basically work with clients that have usually ran initial reports, and we also use the open data because it's a great way of getting a general idea and spotting risk areas. But it's not enough, so we go a step further by using high-resolution satellite images and manual checks to give a more accurate and reliable analysis, especially in smaller areas where global data might miss details.
Okay, thank you. And another question just while you're there as well. So in terms of your role, which I find fascinating, I guess it's your job, as your title says, you analyze the data, you check and verify the polygon data before sending it to a client. So they can upload the rest of their due diligence statements to the EU. So is that correct? It's all part of a huge statement and the polygon mapping, a crucial part, but it's part of a process, isn't it? And you check that, do you? And you say, okay, this is good to go. We're happy with this. There should be no problems. Is that kind of how you are, how this works?
Certainly, we would validate the polygon that we receive. For clients who have already run an initial report and need confirmation, we take their flagged polygons and that they provide, and we begin our work from there. The thing is, we can also analyze polygons that haven't undergone an initial risk check, which is where we have to do the validation again. And then after that, we go through this process that I've just shared here on the webinar.
Okay, and how long have you been working on the? I know you've been mapping farms, plots for a long time, data in other commodities, but how long have you been working on specifically on EUDR compliance solutions?
Oh, it has been quite some time. I picked this up roughly around last year, November, so I've spent an adequate amount of time on this.
Okay, so you are up to your eyeballs in data. How do you sleep at night?
Yeah. I just do when I pass out or something.
How do you switch off? But anyway, okay. Thank you, Chloe, for that. And as I said, if there's any part of that presentation that perhaps you don't understand, Chloe's happy to go back. And I think this presentation will be part of the on-demand service of the video after this webinar, so it will all be there for people to have a look, scrutinize, and take their time over if they need to find any more details. Okay, thank you, Chloe. Over, Freddie. What came up there again is interesting, and on a general overview now. What I'm interested in is this question has been raised, but I'm quite intrigued by it. How how does the European Commission categorize high risk, low risk cocoa or areas? Is it countrywide? I mean, I know countries like Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana maybe feel penalized, that they are probably under more scrutiny, whether rightly or wrongly. Is it when they see cocoa coming from Cote d'Ivoire or an area in Cote d'Ivoire or an area in Ghana, that they will look more closely, or what's their method? Can you say?
It's a really good question, honestly, Anthony, and I'm probably the wrong person to ask because Chloe has spent the last 8 months reading through the regulation. So, Chloe, I don't know if you you have anything to add on that, or I can give my take, which is on a broad brush.
Yeah, you can give your take, Freddie. You've got this too. You've been on it as long as I have as well.
So my understanding is that risk areas are fairly broad and fairly generalized. So that's really that's what we're working to. We also regularly and we're constantly having challenges to the regulation, updates to the regulation, and indeed breakthroughs from compliance providers. And I hope this is going to be one of these breakthroughs where people are interpreting the regulation in a new way that ensures that it's meeting its ends, i.e. deforestation is being stopped, but that people aren't being unfairly penalized. So that's a sort of broad brush answer to that one.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of, again, it kind of relates to this, the risk mitigation side of things. I'd like to know really, and probably viewers, readers, listeners would like to know what steps AI data is taking in terms of risk mitigation. One of the concerns, again, is that non-compliant cocoa, I think we have a question coming up about this, gets into the value chain and is therefore rejected. So I understand IA data with partners ACM and other partners, Origin and Demeter Holdings, are working with suppliers on their full EUDR due diligence solutions. But as regards to risk mitigation, how would you approach that?
Another
Freddie is
good question. I think there's two parts to this answer. So when we talk about, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I
think you're a little bit freezing a bit, but yeah, we've got you.
Sorry. Let me know if I am again. I'm in a shared workspace in London with very poor internet for some reason. But so if we're talking about splitting a polygon, as Chloe touched on earlier, I think it's very important that we have mitigation measures in place. That means that once a farmer has split a polygon, they can't move any goods from the high risk part of that polygon into the value chain. And so we do that. We give assurance on that through yield estimation. So if somebody's now got a much smaller polygon, we know how much yield they should be producing, and then we can flag risk if we feel that there's something wrong there. With regards to the farmers, the growers, and the importers who've got polygons that are now flagged as high risk and non-compliant, mitigation, again, can mean a number of things. We can take a look at the high resolution satellite imagery and give a lot of indications as to exactly why is it non-compliant. We can give you a whole other bunch of information about the farm, how it's changed, why it's changed, etc. And that can often lead to strategies to remediate the land. The beautiful part about being in this consortium is that we have ACM and Demeter who have boots on the ground capability in a huge amount of markets, particularly the major cocoa growing markets, where we can send people to the farm. We can give hands-on advice on how to remediate land and how to make things compliant again.
Good. Excuse my ignorance on this, but it's a phrase that I've just discovered in the last week or so. Is that the same as ground truthing? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? It sounds like it's not particularly boots on the ground, or is it? What's your approach to ground truthing in relation to the data?
Yeah, it's a good one. So ground truthing is something that we hear a lot about in the AI business in general. ground truthing refers to if you build a model of any kind, whether it's a model to detect deforestation or detect cats from photos of cats, the model is going to make a prediction, and then you're going to have to validate that prediction. And you can validate that prediction by either a person looking at the photo as well, or somebody actually going and checking. So there's different levels of truth to the prediction. So if we look at the concept of ground truthing with what we've been talking about today,
Yes.
You have a sort of first and highest level of truth as to whether something's been deforested from that initial algorithmic assessment. And as Chloe's shown, the algorithms are broadly very good at detecting deforestation, but they can be fallible. So you might want to have a secondary layer of truth, which is when we have people manually inspect high resolution images, and they can say, actually, deforestation hasn't occurred here, or actually it has, and this is what we need to do about it. That's a sort of another much superior form of validating what's happened. And then the third layer would actually be going and looking at the site, and that's what we would describe as ground truthing in this instance. You are going, you can see physically exactly what's happened. There's no distortion at all. So that's probably the highest, most time-consuming, but most accurate measure of validating deforestation.
Absolutely. We'll talk about porous borders for countries in a minute. But on that note as well, you may have seen the recent video from African Cocoa Marketplace. Is any polygon map correct? Where Christy attempted to walk the boundary of a smallholder cocoa farm in Ghana without the farmer, as if she could have been an EU person. She could have been some, bureaucrat coming down to check. And I've been to Ghana, and I think a lot of people probably, and Cote d'Ivoire, and I've seen how the size of the plots and where they are. But she got hopelessly confused with the actual border of this one person's farm. Where does it end? Where does it begin? It's possibly a nightmare scenario. Are you saying with the technology, with the HITL, humans in the loop, with the boots on the ground from ACM and partners, you can pretty much, I know you can't give 100% perhaps, or maybe you can, but you can pretty much say, this polygon map is, will be fully compliant. Can you say?
Yeah, I think anyone who says 100% shouldn't be trusted in fields of machine learning in general. But I think we really have put forward quite a strong proposition in combining advanced satellite analysis using algorithmic assessments, which we're really well versed in, with human level inspection, which we've discovered kind of before most people are talking about it, that that's a really necessary step to get down to the truth. And then, of course, what Christy and her team add is that super enhanced compliance, that the people that want to take this regulation seriously, the people who want to keep their supply chains intact and keep their farmers well treated and in business, and the farmers who indeed want to protect their farms, that's the sort of level that some people will want to go to. So I think together, it's the highest feasible level of truth and accuracy that we've seen assembled so far.
Good. And I meant to qualify that actually by saying the industry, not just your company, can the industry guarantee 100% EUDR compliance cocoa? Because everyone is in the same boat. Operators, producers, providers, solution providers. It's a relatively unknown at the moment, isn't it? Until the system goes live in Brussels, and operators start uploading their statements and see what happens. Then we may have a complete shortage of cocoa. Everything might get there might be a glitch. You never know. I understand the stress testing hadn't gone too good, and they're trying to work on that. But that's their problem. You guys can only do, you and your partners can only do what you can do, and just pray, I guess. But there is a question come in, and it's from Marc Donaldson, and I'm just going to read this out. I think I get the gist of it. And I think probably you, Freddie, I think you'll be the best person to answer this. And he says basically, I'll just grab this so I can see. Thank you, Mark, again for. Oh, we got some. All right, we've got another question as well. Thank you, Mark, for this. He says, as experienced previously with certified cocoa, there is a very high probability that beans from non-compliant farms will be moved to compliant farms. So that's kind of, we kind of covered that a little bit, thereby bypassing your system that identifies trees and not beans. Maybe that's the point he's getting to there. As there will be, in all probability, this is a significant shortage of EUDR compliant beans. That, again, this is what we just talked about. This is a distinct possibility. This issue will, in my opinion, be the major porous border to the EUDR. What are your thoughts on this potential smuggling? I think, is he talking about between farms and then farmers sending beans over the borders? And, the close borders out of Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Nigeria, they're all in that belt. And I'm sorry, we are talking about West Africa at the moment, that region. So,
yeah, so my understanding of that question was, so you might have porous borders between different markets and countries, but also between compliant and non-compliant polygons. And we've even talked in this presentation about splitting out polygons into sort of non-compliant areas and compliant areas. Yeah. And I think, honestly, it's a really, really astute question, and it's a very difficult problem to solve. Our philosophy and our theory at the moment is that, and our system is based around having very accurate satellite and human inspection derived yield estimations based on benchmarks, areas, tree counts, and our bespoke algorithms, which we use with commercial and smallholder farmers to estimate yield using satellite and drone data to predict how much a farm should be producing, given lots of different factors. Some I've mentioned, some I haven't, including weather, etc. So once you know roughly how much a compliant farm should be producing, and you've got a traceability system in place, as we do within the consortium, which is going to map beans into bags, bags into lorries, lorries to the port, and to distributors, then you have at least an idea of how to flag when something definitely doesn't look right. So it's going to limit the problem. I think it's very, very difficult to stop it in its entirety with what we currently do. I think that's something that we definitely would admit. But it's something that we think about a huge amount. And it's also a big part of our sort of boots on the ground initiative within the consortium to dig into the causes of that and try to understand how we might mitigate it.
Okay, I don't know if you've referenced that, just the other question from Mark. What is your database calculation for yield? Is that something Chloe can answer? Is there an answer to that question? I guess it's an important one, isn't it? Because you have to, there must be a benchmark for how much a cocoa farmer grows, and then you can tell really if the beans have been, snuffled in elsewhere. I guess I think that's what he's getting at there. Would that be true? Would that be
true? Yeah. I think it's just a combination of the data that I've sort of referenced and the metrics that I've referenced around tree count, benchmarks for certain areas for yield, weather and other major macro factors have affected supply in different areas. So those are the sorts of things that we look at to come up with an estimate. And whilst that gives you a sort of a broadish range of expectation, if somebody's smuggling beans, you're going to see outliers there. So that's really how we do it. We'd probably be more happy to share details of that with one of our brochures or off the presentation if someone's interested. Please do get in touch.
Sure. And another question which you'll be very pleased about, I'm sure, at IAData, what would the process be for a client who wants to implement the solution using AIData's solution? So that's from Gillian Hammer. So thank you, Gillian, for that. You can briefly say something, and I'm sure your sales team, marketing team will follow up with Gillian on that, Scott. But what is the process if someone is watching this thinking, my God, we need to get our due diligence in order in our polygon mapping. So what's the process? If they want to
absolutely. Great question. Very exciting question. Thank you very much for that, Gillian. Glad to see interest already. It's a fairly simple process, but it's kind of bespoke to where you are with your compliance assessment. So the first step would be to get in touch with us through ACM actually, and the ACM email is shared in this webinar, and I think it'll be shared afterwards as well. And then we'll get on a discovery call. We'll understand whether you've undertaken any compliance measures already, whether you've mapped your polygons, whether you've done any analysis on your polygons, and then we can move forward into our process. And Chloe covered some of what that would look like in the presentation.
Good, thank you. Sorry, yeah. Go. Yeah, there's a couple of other questions. One might be sensitive business. How much does the service cost? I think you will probably chat with on a client basis on that. But it's important to know as well for iodata. I'd like to know how. I don't know much about you. How long you've been established? You've worked in other commodities, and a little bit more about your key term solutions with ACM. We've got a few minutes left, so your chance to. Your pitch.
The pitch. Well, I think Chloe's done a great job of pitching for us.
She has indeed. Yes.
Overstep on that. But how long have we been around? We're about 3 years old as a company. We've got about 130 full-time employees spread across the UK and Ghana. So we've grown quite quickly. We've really focused in computer vision, AI, and particularly with using geospatial, so satellite and drone data to give insights on farms and forestry projects. That's the sort of meat of our business. And when EUDR came to our attention and we started speaking to Christy about how we might help, that's really when we zoomed into this. That was late last year, as Chloe mentioned, in November. And so that's the time we've had to really develop this solution. What have I missed there, Anthony?
No, I think that's good. How established, the workload we've gone into key term solutions with ACM. We've got
cost is one. I can then talk about cost a little bit, but it's really bespoke situations. If you imagine the majority of the cost in doing this is in purchasing very high resolution satellite imagery, and you have to purchase a minimum area, and you have to purchase 2 images, one of the 2020 state and one of the current state. So if you have lots of polygons that are close together, your cost is going to be really low. So, under $10 per polygon, maybe even under, a couple of dollars a polygon. If you just have a single polygon, you've still got to buy a big chunk of satellite data. That's going to drive the price up. So it's quite a bespoke pricing model. We can be very transparent about how things are costed, but that would happen on a discovery call.
Great. I think this is for ACM, but the cost doesn't really come down to the farmer, does it? It's the operator, it's the supplier, it's the producer. Obviously, the farmer will suffer if his beans are not compliant, but the costs are met by. Again, maybe not for you. This is probably for the ACM team, but it's the producer, isn't it? Not the producer. It's the supplier, the operator, that has to bear that cost. Is that correct?
Yes. I don't know if Chris, you want to come in, or anyone from the ACM team wants to come in and talk about that.
No, it's okay. We can discuss that later. It's just to give the audience a kind of idea of what this is, and the smallholder farmers obviously worried, especially Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana. I don't know what the percentage of their cocoa beans go to the EU, but it's a massive amount, isn't it? And and they are fretful of their business, their livelihood, and it's up to companies like ACM, like yourselves, like the big producers, to really look after them as well and make sure that they're doing the best they can with their beans. So to get this to market, so they can continue to supply the EU. That's the outcome that we would like, isn't it, from this scenario, from the EUDR. Okay, right. I think we're going to just few minutes left. We're going to wrap up though. But thank you, Freddie and Chloe, for your insights on this topic. I'm sure ACM and yourselves will follow up online on LinkedIn with any outstanding questions or with a post. We'll be back with another webinar very soon, probably in September, I think, one of these. We'll continue to be talking, discussing, arguing, debating on the EUDR. So keep an eye out for more webinars on this. They're short, sweet, lunchtime, 30 minutes usually. We've gone a little bit over